Most property owners are familiar with charging new tenants the first month's rent and a security deposit. However, the question remains, should you collect the last month's rent as well? In today's video, we'll discuss the advantages, disadvantages, and key things to consider before making your decision. Hey everyone, it's Alyssa here from Bay Property Management Group, your local property management experts here to help owners throughout Maryland, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania get the most from their rental investment. Before we get started, be sure to check out the link in the description to our blog, which offers the latest industry news, plus advice and tips for rental owners, investors, and tenants. So with that said, let's jump into today's video. It's not unusual for landlords or tenants to confuse the terms security deposit with last month's rent. While they typically may equal the same amount, that is where the similarity stops. To better illustrate this point, let's review some of the most common misconceptions surrounding last month's rent versus security deposits. It is wrong for landlords to assume they can use the last month's rent for the same reasons as a security deposit, such as non-payment of rent or damage to the property, while in fact, the only proper use is paying for the last month's rent designated in the lease. Another common misconception is that landlords can charge a new tenant the first month's rent, a security deposit up to the maximum amount, and last month's rent. However, many states recognize last month's rent as subject to the deposit collection limits. Therefore, the total amount collected from incoming tenants must not exceed the state's maximum, regardless of how it is broken down. On the other hand, tenants sometimes believe they can apply a security deposit to their last month's rent. However, unless expressly written into the lease agreement, this is not the case. So what can the last month's rent be used for? In short, the purpose is to pay the monthly rent due during the last month the tenant resides in a rental property. Thus, if a lease agreement dictates that the last month's rent is due at the lease signing and the tenant pays accordingly, no rent will be due at the end of the lease term. Like every decision landlords make, there are pros and cons to consider. Let's review 3 positive reasons in favor of collecting last month's rent. By collecting first and last month's rent, in addition to a security deposit, landlords are more likely to attract high-quality tenants. Moreover, by providing the total amount up front, the tenant demonstrates that they are financially responsible. Thus, the chances of a missed or late rent payment are likely lower. Collecting last month's rent adds an extra layer of financial protection for property owners. So, if the tenant skips out or stops paying, you are already 1 month ahead. Not collecting last month's rent in advance could leave the landlord in a bind, especially if the tenant owes any excess beyond the security deposit. On the flip side, every advantage has a disadvantage, and collecting last month's rent is no exception. Moving is a significant expense for anyone. Therefore, the first and last month's rent plus a security deposit is a lot of money to ask for upfront, even for financially stable tenants. This can affect the number of qualified applicants in your tenant pool. Keep in mind, while asking for last month's rent may get a better quality tenant, it could also extend the vacancy time. Another consideration is what to do if the rent increases. If the original last month's rent was $1,000 and a subsequent renewal rate is $1,200 a month, the difference must be collected. Failing to collect this additional amount at the time of the increase could prove a loss for landlords. Keep in mind, you will not be allowed to collect the difference when your tenant moves out at the end of the lease term. Last month's rent comes with a certain limited flexibility. While this can only be applied toward rent, a standard security deposit can go towards things like lost rent or tenant damage at the end of the lease term. So, some owners feel it is better to collect a general security deposit in line with the state's limitations, as this offers property owners more flexibility in how funds get dispersed. Every landlord, property, and tenant presents a unique set of circumstances. Therefore, what works for one may not work for another. This is why property owners must carefully weigh their options before requiring last month's rent as part of their rental agreement. In addition, always be sure to research any applicable local laws that may influence your final decision. For more advice on a variety of other issues important to the rental industry, subscribe to the Bay Property Management Group channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss out on exclusive content. Also, be sure to check out our blog via the link in the description below for tips on tenant screening, along with everything from leasing best practices to financing your first rental income property purchase. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.